Hey there, and welcome to Refocus. My party is about to reach level 3, and I thought I might share the subclasses that I built for them. So take a peek behind my screen and check out what I have custom built for my players in my DC-20 Lost Mines of Phandelver conversion. The first character that I wanted to look at is Celebelko. He's a monk and has chosen the Way of Mercy. I did my best to capture the flavor and mechanics of the 5th edition Way of Mercy monk, and you'll see here that he will have novice training in medicine and insight. I saw an interesting thing in the magic item creator today, and I believe I'm going to add that as well, which is if his training in medicine and insight is at its limit, then I would give him a bonus to his checks in those skills. The next thing that the Way of Mercy monk in 5th edition gets is training in herbalism. To demonstrate that in DC-20, I have decided to increase his trade mastery cap and give him an extra point into his herbalism trade mastery. The other iconic thing with the Way of Mercy monk is Hand of Healing and Hand of Harm. So, the way that I have made that work with DC-20 is that he can spend a key point to give one temporary hit point to a creature within touch range. Alternatively, if he spends one stamina to use Flurry of Blows, he can also spend one key and forego that attack to instead grant two temporary hit points to a creature within touch range. Because of how fast key regenerates in DC-20, I needed to balance the flavor of healing with Hand of Healing and the amount of healing that would be possible with the way that ki regenerates. Because a monk regains one ki whenever they spend stamina, and they regain their stamina whenever they hit with a martial attack on their turn, they can generate an endless supply of ki. So the best way to balance the healing limit of Hand of Healing, I felt, was to make it based on temporary hit points. It still bolsters the character's health, but not in a way that's game breaking where it's unlimited healing. The second part of this feature is Hand of Harm. The main thing that I did here was to remove the once per turn clause in the 5th edition version and put the damage in line with the DC-20 rule set, where when he hits a creature with an unarmed strike, he can spend one ki to add 1 point of umbral damage to that attack. Finally, to give him a little bit something extra, I created Physician's Touch, where when he uses a healer's kit or uses the help action to help somebody using a healer's kit, the target will regain one additional hit point as he imparts some of his ki into the healing. Now let's take a look at the next character. This character is Al Hassin. He's a ranger, and the player really wanted to be able to cook any prey that they might kill while they were out adventuring. The flavor that I got from the concept of cooking the prey that they are able to take while adventuring spoke to me of Hunter Ranger. So, how did I design a Hunter Ranger for DC-20? Well, first I took the Hunter Ranger's key ability, which is Hunter's Prey. I figured once I converted these individual features into DC-20, none of them stood out as so powerful that I should limit him to a choice of only one of these. So I've decided to give him all three, which should help to fulfill that fantasy of being a good hunter. So what he has is your tenacity can wear down the most potent foes. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, the creature takes an extra 1 damage. When a creature within 5 feet of you misses you with an attack, you can spend 1 action point as a reaction to attack that creature immediately after its attack, provided that you can see the creature. And once on each of your turns, you can spend 1 AP to make a weapon attack against 2 creatures that are within 5 feet of each other and that are within range of your weapon. These attacks use the normal multi-check penalty rules. So these are the 3 features of Hunter's Prey from 5th edition, but the middle ability is essentially a monk stance, so not broken at all. The ability to deal 1 extra damage per turn on 1 weapon attack, also not broken, I don't think, and it shows him being a good hunter. And the final ability is cool, but more so than anything, it will probably just help with his action economy. And it's also situational in that he needs 2 enemies that are within 5 feet of each other. The second part of Al's features is Survivalist. This is where he's going to get his ability to cook. Since he's going to be able to cook, I felt like I needed to give him the same trade mastery cap and mastery level in cooking increase, similar to what I did with Cell. You'll see that the mechanics of this survivalist cooking is kind of a mini game where during a long rest he attempts to prepare food for his companions. So it's a DC 10 cooking check, and on a success he creates enough food to feed 2 people. Success each 5, he gets to choose. He can either create better food or he can create more portions. So he can either create an additional portion of food or he can increase the healing granted by all food created from this feature by +1. On a critical success, he prepares enough food for 4 people, and on a failure, he prepares enough food for only 1 person. On a critical failure, he spoils the food and fails to prepare anything. Each creature who during the long rest eats the food that he prepares with his ability heals 2 hit points. So if he uses his successes by 5 to improve the quality of the food, he could make those portions recover more hit points. Essentially, what I was trying to do here is take the burden off of the rest points that would be spent to heal, because in DC 20, even on a long rest, you don't heal from the rest itself, you still heal from spending rest points. So this will be a really flavorful way for Al to take the edge off of the character's rest points and allow them to save them for the next day. So now that we've completed Al Hassin, let's take a look at Dorval. Dorval is a cleric. He wanted to be Forge Domain cleric. The first thing that made sense to me for a Forge Domain is, again, another trade mastery, increasing his mastery level and his smithing trade by 1. With Dorval, I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to retain the flavor and functionality of the 5th edition Forge Domain Cleric, but at the same time, I wanted to work within the core class of the DC 20 Cleric. So you'll see Blessing of the Forge. This gives him 1 more use for his blessing ability that he received at level 1, where he can spend a mana point to use Blessing of the Forge, and then during the next minute he can impart that benefit of granting a +2 PD bonus for 1 minute to the target of one of his spells. Empowerment of the Forge is one that I actually just rebuilt, and I rebuilt it because of the new magic item rules that have just come out. This is an ability from the 5th edition version of the Forge Domain Cleric. However, that version is very boring. You can make a weapon a +1 weapon, or you can make an armor a +1 armor. Once per long rest, and it lasts until you take another long rest. This version is so sick, I think. He gains the ability to imbue magic into a weapon or armor. At the end of a long rest, he can touch 1 non-magical object that is a suit of armor, a shield, or a weapon. Until the end of your next long rest, or until you die, the object becomes a magic item, granting the following options. You imbue the item with a number of magical properties, not to exceed the maximum limit of 3. When you do this, you can imbue a number of magic power into the item equal to your combat mastery. If the item is a weapon, choose from the weapons section of the magic item guide. If the item is an armor or shield, choose from the armor and shield section of the magic item guide. And once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. The really cool thing here is that every day Dwarvel is going to be able to custom add properties to one weapon or armor or shield depending on what he wants or needs for that day. And it's going to give him a unique and interesting way to interact with the new magic item creation guide. Finally, I have provided another use for his channel divinity, which is exactly the same as the 5th edition version. I'm not going to go too in depth, like reading the whole thing, but essentially he can spend his channel divinity to conduct an hour-long ritual where he crafts a non-magic item that's either a simple or martial weapon, a suit of armor, 10 pieces of ammunition, a set of tools, or another metal object. And he needs to provide enough gold piece value of metal to equal the thing that he wants to create. Essentially, he can transmute one metal object or metal objects into another metal object or objects. There really was nothing mechanically DC-20 about this ability. It would work in any game system, really. But because this is a key feature of the Forged Domain Cleric, I felt like I needed to leave this in here for him. So now, let's check out the last character. Last, but certainly not least, is our Druid Talon. He wanted to be a Wildfire Druid, and I think I've really knocked this one out of the park. I tried again to capture the flavor and feel of the 5th edition Wildfire Druid, and keeping some of the same themes and names. So in this case, Circle Spells as a first ability. When you join this circle at 3rd level, you have formed a bond with a Wildfire Spirit, a primal being of creation and destruction. Your link with the spirit grants you the ability to increase your mana spend limit by 1 for your fire spells and restoration spells. In addition, once per day, you can decrease the mana cost of a fire or restoration spell that you cast by 1, not exceeding your mana spend limit. So, rather than giving a set list of spells that he always knows, that doesn't really play well with the way that DC-20 handles spells and spellcasters. I thought this would be a really cool, flavorful way to show his mastery over fire and restoration, which is the theme of the Wildfire Druid. But wait, it gets better. Fiery Domain. So this is another domain option that he can use with his domain spaces. So once he has created his domain spaces, he can spend 1 action point and 1 mana point. His Druid domain will fill with rejuvenating and damaging flames. For 1 minute, when a hostile creature ends its turn within the Druid domain, it must make a physical save versus burning. And once during the duration, he can take the following activity. 2 action points, make a DC 10 spell check to heal a target within the domain. The target immediately regains 2 hit points. Success each 5, they immediately regain an additional hit point. And on a failure, they only regain 1 hit point. The power of this ability is going to be both defensive and offensive, and it's going to make people not want to come within that domain, but it is going to also bolster your ally at the same time. So again, I think this ability really captures the flavor and feel of a Wildfire Druid. But the thing that really makes a Wildfire Druid is the Wildfire Spirit. So let's take a look at this one. This is the most complex one. You summon a Wildfire Spirit for 2 AP and 1 MP. You summon the Primal Spirit bound to your soul. The spirit appears in an unoccupied space of your choice that you can see within 5 spaces. Each creature within 2 spaces of the spirit, other than you, when it appears, must succeed on a physical saving throw or take 1 fire damage. Failure each 5, an extra fire damage, and on a critical failure, 1 extra fire damage. The spirit is friendly to you and your companions and obeys your commands. The Wildfire Spirit uses a modified version of the Wild Shape stat block. You determine the spirit's appearance, Some spirits take the form of humanoid figure made of gnarled branches covered in flame, while others look like beasts wreathed in fire. So essentially, for flavor, he can make his wildfire spirit look however he would like. In combat, the spirit shares his initiative count, having a shared initiative with him. The wildfire spirit has only 2 action points, and Talon will gain the following action while the wildfire spirit is manifested. Boost Spirit. For 1 action point, his wildfire spirit gains 2 action points, and he can only take this action once each turn. The spirit manifests until it's reduced to 0 hit points, until you use this feature to summon the spirit again, or until you die. There's a couple of really key features with this ability. The first is that I took the clause out from the wildfire spirit that it only manifests for an hour. Since he's spending mana to summon it, I feel like it should always be with him. It could be like his pet. If he wants to resummon it, or to resummon it so it appears somewhere else on the battlefield, he could spend the mana and the action points again to do so. However, I think it's really cool that I removed that clause and he can always have the wildfire spirit with him. The other thing that I wanted to capture was the flavor and the feel of the way that the wildfire spirit worked. In 5th edition, it takes its turn immediately after yours, and the only action that it can take is dodge, unless you spend a bonus action to give it the ability to use any of its actions. For DC 20, full dodge is 2 actions, so this will still let it either move twice, move once and dodge once, full dodge. It'll have some very limited capabilities with only 2 action points. However, if Talon is willing to give up one of his actions, very similarly to spending a bonus action in 5th edition, he can grant the Wildfire Spirit 2 additional actions, thereby giving it a much broader turn. You'll see that he uses the Wild Shape stat block, but with a couple of changes. I've given the Wildfire Spirit a bonus to hit points equal to his combat mastery, so this will boost the base Wildfire Spirit from 2 to 4 when he gets it at level 3, and it will continue to grow with him as he levels, because as his combat mastery increases, so too will the base hit points of the Wildfire Spirit. This is also very similar to how the Wildfire Spirit works in 5th edition, where its hit points scale based on your druid level. The Wildfire Spirit only has 2 action points as mentioned earlier, and the Wildfire Spirit has damage immunity to fire. It also has the following actions that it can take on its turn, which are my renditions of the 5th edition versions. So let's take a look at those. It can use Flame Seed for 1 action point, make a ranged spell attack, 10 spaces, against 1 target. Hit, 1 fire damage. Each 5, an additional fire damage. Critical success, plus 2 fire damage. And then Fiery Teleportation. 2 action points, make a DC 10 spell check. On a success, the spirit and each willing creature of your choice within 1 space of it teleport up to 3 spaces to an unoccupied space you can see. On a failure, the creatures teleport 1 space. Then each creature within 1 space of the space the spirit left must succeed on a physical saving throw contested by your spell check, or take 1 fire damage. Failure, each 5, plus 1 fire damage. Critical failure, plus 1 fire damage. So there's a couple really cool things here with the Fiery Teleport, mechanically, I think. The first is you're making a spell check, so that balances because of stacking disadvantage with the multiple check penalty. If this is the Wildfire Spirit's second spell check on a turn, or if it tries to Fiery Teleport twice in the same turn, there is a chance that it could fail. Also, the Wildfire Spirit is only making 1 check, and then that is the DC for the physical saving throw of the enemy. And the final clause is that is the 1 mana point base for the summon. But when summoning the Wildfire Spirit, he can spend more mana. For each mana he spends up to his mana spend limit, he can give the spirit 2 more traits from the Wild Shape or the Beastborn ancestry. Summoning the Wildfire Spirit counts as casting a fire spell for the purpose of your mana spend limit. So essentially, he can go one higher than his combat mastery for his mana spend limit when summoning the Wildfire Druid, up to 3 mana at level 3. And if he does, he'll get 4 additional traits that he can use to bolster the Wildfire Spirit further. So I think this will be really cool because every time he summons the Wildfire Spirit, it could come with different traits. It could have wings at some point and fly, maybe, or whatever other abilities he thinks he might want it to have. So anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this look behind my screen and the subclasses that I homebrewed for my players in my game. So I just wanted to let you know that I have 2 spots left in a Lost Mines of Phandelver converted to DC 20. Those games are Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'll leave the game info in the description below. Hopefully you'll consider joining one of our games. And until next time, thank you for rolling with us.